if you have heard of central bank digital currencies and stable coins, then you'll definitely be interested in the next panel discussion centered around the role and prospects for digital currencies to deliver the future of payment. This panel aims to help you understand the progress being made towards a new generation of world-class, widely adopted payment systems. Moderated by Joshua Ashley Klayman, Global Tech Sector Co-Head at Linklaters, the panel comprises Stuart Levey, Chief Executive Officer of Libra Association, now known as Diem, Chief Product Officer of Coinbase, Surojit Chatterjee, Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Circle, Jeremy Allaire, and Makoto Takemiya, Chief Executive Officer of Soramitsu. We'll now go over to Joshua and the panelists to explore how digital currencies can deliver the payment systems of the future.
Hi, welcome to our panel, Can Digital Currencies Birth the Next Generation of World-Class Payment Systems? My name is Josh Klayman. I'm from Linklaters, which is a global law firm, and I'm here with a world-class panel who knows all about payment systems and about digital currencies. So I'd like to introduce, without any further hesitation, our speakers for today's panel. I'd like them to each introduce themselves and also say a little bit about digital currencies and what they think it's relevant for the audience to know at the outset. So I'll start with Jeremy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Jeremy Allaire. I'm co-founder and CEO of Circle. I've been working in internet technology and platforms for almost 30 years and started Circle about 7 years ago. We focus on providing platforms for operating with digital currency as a payment system and helping institutions, both commerce firms and banks and fintechs, to take advantage of that. I guess to the definitions, when I think about digital currency, from my perspective, it's really this idea that we can take, what we think of as a traditional currency, like the liability of a central bank, like a dollar or a euro, and we can represent that as a native form of data on the internet. Just like we can represent audio or data or text or content, that we actually have a way to represent money as a native data type on the internet and exchange it and transmit it with the same ease that we can exchange information and content and communications online. And I think there are non-sovereign digital currencies, meaning these are digital currencies that are generated by networks and by incentive systems like Bitcoin. And then there are the stablecoin digital currencies, which I know we'll talk about a little bit here, which are designed to really either be backed by or mimic the behavior of a fiat currency, such as a dollar or a euro.
Thanks, Jeremy. Stuart?
Hello, Josh. I'm Stuart Levey. I'm the CEO of the Libra Association. I've been doing that only since August, so not quite the veteran that Jeremy is. But when I think of digital currency, I think of it more in terms of what can be done with them, the functionality. Jeremy described what it is. I think the key thing is the utility that people can derive from a digital currency, to use money, program it to ultimately to do what they want it to do, and to be able to have the utility of that at their fingertips, and frankly to be able to do it at a much lower cost than is currently the situation in the traditional payment systems, thereby I think opening up the possibilities to frankly billions of people that are excluded from the benefits of the current payment system.
Thanks, Stuart. Makoto, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'm Makoto Takemiya. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Soramitsu. We're a Japanese, originally Japanese entity that focuses on blockchain technology. We're mainly boutique service providers, so we do different implementations of digital currencies and other DLT and blockchain-based platforms for institutions. So we built the Bakong digital payment system, you could call it a CBDC even, in Cambodia for the central bank. And additionally, we also work with many open and public blockchain projects, like we're working with Web3 Foundation on Polkadot, and also we do some work with Filecoin and we contribute to many open source projects like Sora and PokeSwap as well. So we do kind of the crypto anarchy type of work, and then also the institutional work with different people. And so digital currencies have always been really interesting to me since I got into blockchain back in 2013, and I was just a hobbyist back then. But yeah, just to build on Jeremy's point that this is kind of like a digital, money is digital data, which is to me very important because you can program it. You can put it into different types of conditional logic and maybe add some rules and do data analyses on this. And that's really exciting. And I think we're not even at 1% of the possibilities yet. I think this is going to be really big and exciting way to kind of change our relationship with money. It's the biggest revolution, I think, in the money really since the Sumerians. So I'm really excited for this.
Thanks. And Surojit, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Surojit Chatterjee. I'm Chief Product Officer at Coinbase. I have spent last 2 decades almost building technologies for the internet. Spent a lot of time in payments, mobile advertising, and commerce globally. I was largely responsible for transforming Google into a mobile first or mobile ads company. To me, digital asset is what other speakers have said already, digitization of value, not just money, anything, any value can be digitized, programmable. And I think the biggest thing for me is this is just like what happened with the internet, right? Where once information is accessible to everyone, we saw a huge amount of innovation, and people could build technology on top of each other and create new things. We think digital assets will bring a similar revolution in all of financial services, how we think about money in the future, and has the promise to create more economic freedom to the world, create more inclusion to all kinds of financial services for everyone. So we are very, very early in this journey, and I think all of us are super excited where we will be in a few years.
Thanks, guys. That was terrific scene setting. So for the audience, as you may know, digital currencies have been heralded as having the transformative potential to reshape global economies and transform the digital age and unlock unparalleled investment opportunities. More recently, stablecoins and CBDCs have gained traction as potential contenders to both fiat as well as traditional, in quotes, cryptocurrencies. However, the promise of digital currencies is at odds a bit right now with the reality of its adoption in the mainstream payments world. For the average person, digital currencies may remain largely incomprehensible, and the rapid and sustained pace of innovation in this space has led to pretty continual disruption of an already disruptive space, increasing inertia for digital currencies to achieve widespread adoption, some say. So today, in addition to the scene setting, we're going to take stock of a few different categories, right? First, we're going to address on this panel, can digital currencies still make good on the promise of fundamentally transforming our approach to payments and finance? When will the future arrive? Next, we're going to look at whether digital currencies can birth our next generation of world-class payment systems and infrastructures. And then finally, what's next in the digital currency roadmap? So as I noted, you guys did a great job setting the scene. Just leading up to the big question about part one, digital currencies, they were touted as a game changer for payments and finance. Have they delivered? Surojit, what do you think? Oh, Jeremy, go ahead. No, please jump in.
I was going to jump in just to say, I think as Surojit actually said, we're really early, and that's okay. I think in 1998, there was a lot of excitement about the World Wide Web and about e-commerce, but there was very little that had actually been achieved. But for those that were seeing the power of an open, connected world and how you could deliver commerce through that, you could see very clearly that over the next 10 years, the next 20 years, it was going to transform how the entire world of commerce functioned. We're in a very similar place right now. We're right on the cusp of what I like to think of as like the broadband moment for digital currency. And there have been real limitations. We haven't had mature frameworks for digital dollar stablecoins or digital currencies that are tied to national currencies. We're now seeing that. We've had technology that was really designed in the early stage for more limited capacity, and now we're seeing third generation blockchain technologies that are making it possible to use digital currency in the hands of hundreds of millions, if not billions of users. And we're seeing, innovation on consumer experience. We're seeing that finally we're getting around to connecting this to the delightful consumer apps that people know and love, whether that be a WhatsApp in the case of Facebook, or a Coinbase wallet, which is obviously a really, really popular wallet in the world. It has a huge number of users. But I think most major fintechs that touch hundreds of millions of users are adding support for this in the next year or two. And that's going to really light this up on a global stage into hundreds of millions of users' hands. And then people will all be saying, how could I ever have not had this before?
Does anyone else want to jump in with their
Sure. I'd jump in right after that, because I agree with everything that Jeremy said. I think that the one thing that may distinguish this field from maybe the internet, the pure internet, is that this is a field where governments feel like they must regulate, that they're not willing, or they're very uncomfortable with the idea that they're just going to stand back and let it happen. Maybe this comes to me naturally because I spent most part of my career as a regulator, so maybe this is why I come to it that way. But I think we're starting to see governments grappling with this, and actually, the government of Singapore is sort of one of the leaders in setting the regulatory standards around these issues. They co-chaired the Financial Stability Board's working group on global stablecoins, for example. I think one of the things that will be necessary before this can reach its full potential that Jeremy lays out is that there'll need to be some sort of harmonization around the way governments treat this, because I think that's one of the things that will be otherwise a significant obstacle. I think we're making great strides there. I think the FSB has put out a framework that people can work with. And frankly, at Libra, we're trying to build something that tries to meet all of the characteristics that are laid out there. But I think unless there's some sort of harmonization around the global regulatory framework, it will be slower it'll be slower to reach potential.
Let me just chime in as well. Totally agree with what Stuart and Jeremy were saying. At Coinbase, we work with a lot of regulators around the world. And I think what we have seen is almost every country, every top country right now is thinking about crypto. And I think it's the responsibility of the industry also to engage with the regulators, educate them about what this innovation can bring for the citizens and their countries, what benefits it can create. And regulatory clarity, we have always seen, creates more innovation. So I think we'll see more innovation as regulations get clearer. I just want to mention one more thing. We have a pretty horizontal kind of service across many different parts of crypto, from trading to like kind of primary financial account, commerce, wallet. We are seeing a lot of interest from institutional investors, for example, in recent times. Almost all large Wall Street banks are interested in crypto. We are seeing a lot of interest in corporate, large mainstream companies like MicroStrategy, for example, recently announced they want to hold crypto. So, and we are seeing, all of us are seeing, for example, large mainstream companies like PayPal or Square getting into crypto. So the point is, crypto is getting more, it's closer to mainstream than it was ever before. Right? It's in the main jargon. It's in the top of Wall Street Journal's front page today, actually, about Bitcoin, right? It used to be something that only a niche set of people knew about. So I think we have crossed that stage and kind of at the cusp of the next growth of crypto.
Thanks. Is there anything other than regulations that you guys think is holding things back from just a really big watershed moment?
I mean, I like, as I said, I think, like the web itself, I use this analogy a lot because I lived through it, but, until you had, for example, broadband internet, and you had, say mobile devices connected to broadband internet, the revolutionary potential of the internet was not, fulfilled. And I think when we talk about the underlying technology here, which is blockchain technology, and the promise of having a financial system that's on the public internet, that's actually out on the public internet, where people are transacting, where businesses are entering into financial arrangements through code on these networks, all of this, we're still not yet at that broadband moment. So I think that's holding it back. And I give a lot of credit, for example, to the Libra Association, what they're trying to do with their blockchain, which is a highly scalable infrastructure. There are many very exciting projects in the blockchain ecosystem that are literally launching as we speak, or have launched in the last 6 to 12 months. And right now, you can really see a path to this being usable at scale. And so, that's, I think, been a major piece of the puzzle technologically, is the scalability. People constantly said, oh, it's not going to be scalable enough. We're now addressing that problem. And you can move a digital dollar over the public internet on a public blockchain with settlement finality in 350 milliseconds at the cost of 1/50th of a penny. That's pretty significant. And that's on infrastructure that can support 50,000 transactions per second. That's more than Visa. So that's here today. And the innovation is not stopping. Like, the technologists working in this space there's more intellectual horsepower on this than I've ever seen in a lot of spaces in my career.
Makoto, what do you think? Do you have any thoughts about this?
Yeah, sure. I think for retail payments, like the infrastructure is already fast enough. So as far as the DLT or blockchain side, the technology has already come of age, at least to be fast enough for retail. We've seen this in Cambodia with the system that launched this year, October 28th. So anyone in the country now can use this system. In the crypto anarchic side, there are some improvements that could be made, but generally, I think there's a path forward with new technologies. But to me, the biggest problem is not technological or regulatory. It's really UX, and user experience is too difficult for the common person. So literacy and being able to teach, what is this magical internet money? Why should I care about it? That's really a hard thing. So I'm still, I've been telling my parents about Bitcoin for 7 years, and they still don't understand it for some reason. But they're not alone. The masses really don't understand it. And so it's about, money is kind of about confidence. And so people have to have confidence and also understand what are the safeguards. With a bank, you have deposit insurance in most countries, right? But if you lose your crypto wallet, you have to have some safeguards that will back it up. Or if somebody comes to steal money from you, how do you stop that? It's really, these are the biggest issues that exist. And these aren't only about crypto, this also works with cash and other types of currencies. But to me, that's the biggest thing. The technology is already, it's good enough for daily use. It's maybe not for high frequency trading or something like that, but it's really matured.
Thanks, guys. And I think this leads us nicely into our theme 2. So theme 2 is, can digital currencies birth our next generation of world-class payment systems and infrastructures? Now, one thing, a couple of you touched upon, some of the things that we're waiting on before we get real mainstream adoption of digital currencies. Jeremy mentioned we haven't had the broadband moment yet. And Makoto just mentioned, education. So is there anything else that's preventing digital currencies from gaining traction with, someone off the street, just a random person? And I guess maybe a deeper question relatedly is, how much do consumers and users need to know about digital currencies in order to use them? Is this different from another kind of payment system?
Maybe I can chime in.
I think, can I maybe, oh, okay.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Go ahead, Serge. No, I think one thing I would say is that, and I hope you can hear me. I've been cut off a couple of times, but is that the average person, some of the use cases that are available, I think, are so powerful that I think the average person will start to, when they start to understand it. Now, it's funny when I talk to my own family, for example, they don't see necessarily what's to be gained. It's a little bit like what Jeremy was saying. You didn't feel that what the advantage would be until you enjoy it. But I guarantee you, if you're somebody who's trying to support your family by sending home remittances, you will see the value of this product, right? Instead of having to pay 6.5% of your money to send it home, if you could do it for a small fraction of that. And those are the sort of the compelling use cases, which, we talk about educating governments, and Surojit mentioned, we need to educate governments. This is one of the primary advantages of digital currencies that policymakers should hear about, because there are many countries around the world whose economies depend on remittances. It's a really compelling use case, and it's one that people can really understand. And frankly, I hope we have time to mention it. Jeremy just had another use case just in the last few days with his product that I think is a tremendous use case that for policymakers to hear about what he did in Venezuela. So, I think having some good, compelling day-to-day examples is what will make the difference. It may not be so much if I walk into a store in a Starbucks and I put I have a contactless card, it feels good enough, right? But it's those compelling use cases I think will make a difference.
Thanks, Stuart. Surojit?
Yeah, I was going to say, Jeremy talked about the broadband moment. I think we need like the WhatsApp or the TikTok moment, when the end user finds it so easy to use and it solves a real need. So remittance is a great example. I think any type of cross-border payment, cross-border commerce would be great example. Just efficiency in money transfer would be great examples. And users don't need to know what's underlying the technology, right? They will use the technology if it solves a real problem for them.
I would add to that. I mean, it's interesting. If you go back in time, right? I remember when talking to people saying you need to get an email account. Why would I need an email account? Why would I can communicate with people however I want, right? And people could not understand why they would need an email account. Once they had it and everyone was connected, it revolutionized personal communications, business. The same thing with text messaging. People are like, why would I ever send an SMS? Like, why would I ever need this? And then when you had these platforms that connected billions of people and they could form groups and they could communicate, there was literally a radical explosion in the amount of text-based communication happening on the planet. And people would never look back. I look at this the exact same way. People cannot grasp what it means to be able to transact with any counterparty anywhere in the world instantly at no cost, and what that means for society. It's very hard for people to grasp that and what that will mean for the velocity of money, for what can take place in commerce relationships, to what that means for supporting your family, for what that means. We're in this age of internet commerce, and obviously the pandemic has heightened that. It's risen awareness about that. More and more of how the economic relationships we have in our lives are mediated by the internet. And we literally are, the blockchain is like the missing layer that is needed to move to that next layer of how society and the economy moves to the internet. And digital currency is just like the liquid. It's just a part of it that's going to be ubiquitous. Actually, the real innovation, which people have a hard time even grasping, is this programmability of money, what that's going to unleash. I use the example of Uber. When the iPhone, came out, in the 2008 iPhone that had 3G and that had a GPS big deal. I can get turn-by-turn directions on my phone. No, big deal. We're going to reinvent the transportation system called Uber, right? People can't grasp what happens when you put these pieces together. And that's what's happening right now. DeFi is an early indicator of that. Developers are building internet credit markets that anyone can access. There's tens of billions of dollars moving into that. That's just stunning. What's that going to look like in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, maybe $1 trillion of value transacted through these networks? These are breakthroughs that I don't think people can quite grasp, but that are happening right in front of us.
I think these are really great points. I think about the programmability. So DeFi is a great example for the different credit markets, and then also DEXs and things like that. So it's really exciting space. I do think that yeah, for the future of payment systems, I think it's pretty obvious that digital currencies can play a big role. I think what's not as obvious is the role in digital monetary or monetary policy with these digital currencies. So a lot of countries have very limited monetary policy tools, and by having digital currencies and the ability to give money to anyone or even rebase a currency digitally, like we have with some DeFi projects, that can give new tools that didn't exist before. And some things, some mistakes will probably be made, but this is a new way to kind of bring people together. And personally, what's kind of an interesting thing to me is the idea of supranational, idea of like a supranational central bank where people can come together with certain rules and then work to allocate a new currency. And so something like that can be quite profound effect when it's combined with programmability and even things like AI that can help with sectoral analysis to deliver the currency to targeted places. Because at the end of the day, what's the most important thing is really human productive human output. So people should go out and create things and build new things and push everyone forward. And capital is really just one way to kind of provide the grease for that to happen. And I think it's a good method. Capitalism has helped the world quite a lot compared with some alternative experiments. And I think we can start to even expand this beyond just a single country and do kind of global initiatives.
Can I say something that may be slightly controversial here, because it's really easy to get enthused and excited and say, "Wow, this is all perfect," right? I do think, in having tried to sit down with regulators around the world to talk about Libra, which I think maybe is being given a certain treatment because people. Regulators think it could scale very quickly because of the size of one of our members. That people think, and so they're looking at what happens if it scales. And the reason I raise this as a potentially sobering point, I think, is that regulators are very, very focused on the illicit finance issues. And I know there's a really interesting debate out there about the ability to control illicit finance in a decentralized system, but I don't think that that's an issue that's going to be resolved in regulators' minds instantaneously. I think there are some real concerns on their part about, especially in the West, about controlling money laundering, about the efficacy of sanctions, and they're frankly looking at projects like the ones that being driven by the PBOC in China, and saying, wait, that's creating an alternative system that is exempt from these rules, or could potentially be exempt from, particularly from sanctions rules, and it's saying that they have real concerns about them. Now, I think that those policymakers will have a say, at least in the medium term, over the way this whole ecosystem develops, and I think we're going to need to adjust to those policymakers.
It's a very profound moment right now on this. I think the policy issues are really pronounced. They're very significant, and on the one hand, we're looking at the internet of money, and I think people can intuitively say, "Wow, that is so transformative." And then on the other hand, we have a rule set that is designed around, national security interests or financial crimes enforcement interests. And I think it's sort of incumbent on sort of the technologists and the entrepreneurs and the creators on the one hand, and the policymakers and the regulators on the other, to kind of come at this with a very open mind, and not simply say, well, either this is a libertarian paradise or this is a totalitarian nightmare, and really figure out. And I think it's frankly, it's mostly incumbent on the industry and on technology creators to address the risks that are on the table here, and find ways to do that actually don't sacrifice the fundamental openness that we hold so dear. And so, because policymakers aren't going to come and tell you how to do that. You got to do that. Entrepreneurs need to do that. People need to bring solutions to the table that address those issues. This is like the Gordian knot of cryptocurrency. It's sitting there and people are trying to figure out how to crack it.
So I have a question for all of you, which is, and I think maybe we can go through a number of you with this, all of you if you wish, but is government endorsement, or in the case, for example, of Cambodia, adoption, is that a necessary ingredient for digital currencies to truly take root? I guess it would be great to hear from each of you. Makoto, I think it would be great to hear about the thought process in Cambodia and the challenges and how adoption has been. I'd also love to hear from others, whether they agree the government endorsement is important or critical, or not, and maybe some use cases that people are seeing or have developed that they'd like to talk about that show why it is or isn't important. I guess, Makoto, are you able to tell us a little bit about what's been going on in Cambodia?
Yeah, so we've been working with the National Bank of Cambodia, the central bank and regulator, since 2017, and it's Project Bakong is the name of the system, and it's a real-time retail payment system. There's a mobile app that the central bank actually put out that anyone with a phone number can install, and they can use it pretty easy, like a prepaid top-up style system. And so this system allows anyone to send money to someone with a Cambodian phone number. So this is great for domestic remittances. And having the regulator and the central bank, which is the same entity, having them to come together and really, try to push this system out was what I think made it really, I think, the world's first large-scale system, which is quite, other countries have been just talking about doing experiments after several years. They haven't actually moved it out into the real world. What's also interesting at the same time is that Cambodia is also very negative on cryptocurrencies. So they don't allow cryptocurrencies. They're very strict. They haven't authored any authorizations to use it. They've just kind of been doing like a full block on the use of pretty much every other digital currency except for their own, which is, of course, makes sense because they're afraid of monetary policy, hurting the efficacy of that through having different currencies to compete with. And I think many countries are the same way. But I also think that depending on the country, the government should potentially embrace supranational digital currencies, because that can have other economic benefits such as trade or remittances. So countries that rely a lot on foreign income could potentially have a lot of benefits. But I do think that having a system like a CBDC, but maybe spanning a region of countries, would need really great democratic oversight and governance, because without that, it can be really totalitarian, kind of like what's going on, I think, in some regions of the world. So you have to be really careful about how you design the governance of these systems. Otherwise, because it's digital nature, people can get lose access potentially, which is not the world you want to create.
Yeah, Surojit, do you have any thoughts about this?
Sure, I think absolutely government. I think endorsement or a regulatory framework is needed to build trust. A lot of people will not trust even Bitcoin or other currencies if government did not have some kind of regulatory framework. For example, in the US, we have the BitLicense concept. And so on. Government of Singapore has been very progressive with MAS being kind of friendly to crypto. I think that creates, just like the internet, right? It creates trust, and you will see a lot more users jumping in and growing the ecosystem. I think as Jeremy said, the technologies, the private companies, private sector has a huge responsibility to make sure they're operating within, collaborating first with the government very well. They're building towards more trust, right? Weeding out bad actors from their systems, because more bad actors means less trust in the overall system to help anybody. And I also think a big thing will be, as more governments start going towards CBDCs, kind of interoperability of the CBDCs, interoperability between CBDCs and the supranational clients like Bitcoin and Ethereum and other clients that are getting created. Our whole banking and payment networks need to adapt to make this all very interoperable. It will take time, but I think we are kind of moving in the right direction. That's my hope.
Thanks, Surojit. And Jeremy, I'd love to hear a little bit, if you're comfortable with it, about the project that that Stuart alluded to.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. We did a announcement about this just earlier this week. We were able to work with the exiled, previously elected government of Venezuela, which was refused by Maduro in Venezuela. Able to work with that exiled government, and with the support of the U.S. government, we're able to essentially use USDC to disperse digital currency to frontline healthcare workers in Venezuela through a partnership with a fintech that has a digital wallet product that supports USDC. And so it was a powerful way that not only were critical policy objectives, foreign aid objectives, and ultimately, providing critical assistance to people who have very little support on the ground. It was a way to bypass an authoritarian regime. It was a way to give those people stable value through USDC, which is a digital dollar stablecoin, in the face of a hyperinflationary kind of economic system. So fairly profound on multiple levels in terms of what happened, what was made possible. And I think raises the bar for governments as they think about what role digital currency can play, not just in improving payment systems, but in fact, how diplomacy takes place, how how aid is distributed globally. These are major things, major openings, and I think a real powerful thing. I mean, I think it's one of the things that in some ways people are reacting to the idea of the DCEP and a Chinese digital currency. I mean, I think what China is doing is profound, and I think it's very significant. China will have anyone with a smartphone in the world will be able to transact with China over the internet. And that shouldn't just be viewed as a threat, like, oh no, the SWIFT is going to be bypassed. I mean, this is here to stay. The genie's out of the bottle. People can transact on the internet. People can transact with digital currency on the internet. Money can go over the top the internet. We're not going to stuff that back in the bottle. And so there will be attempts to sort of, I think, ramrod cryptocurrency into the structure of the existing financial system. I think those will largely fail. What's important is to say, okay, what does a world look like with open financial systems? And then how do we deal with these deep risks like sanctions? How do we deal with these deep risks like the funding of terrorism? It's more complicated than just saying, well, we have these laws, you need to just meet the letter of those laws. We have to get more creative than that. For example, we have terrorists posting videos on YouTube all the time. We have people being recruited on WhatsApp to join terrorist cells. Are we shutting those platforms down? No, we're figuring out ways to collaborate with industry to solve those problems. I think the same thing has to be dealt with here. So everything's not just put the genie back in the bottle. We have to be able to think very, very creatively about how to, not throw the baby out with the bathwater, as it were.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I mean,
Can I?
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Of course, go ahead.
No, well, I was just going to make a couple of comments there. One is that it's true what the Chinese are doing is profound, but it does have a result of the central government authority potentially having access to every detail of every transaction, which I think is very different from the vision that I think we all have, but certainly that I know that Jeremy has. And so I think we have to take that very seriously. To go back to the question of government endorsement being necessary, I think government acceptance, I agree with Surojit that government acceptance and meeting their framework is critical. I guess the only thing I would potentially differ on is I think that it is, Jeremy made the point earlier about the technologists have a responsibility to try to solve this problem. And I think that we as an industry are going to have to really grapple with it and really try to solve that problem. And I think the kind of arguments that policymakers will be very resistant to are two. One is there's a lot of illicit activity already in the financial system. They know that, but that's not a good enough answer for them because they're going to say, what about the system you're building? What about, how do you keep the illicit activity out of that? And secondly, just the, well, we have to find another way to solve it. I think these are, at least Western governments are very attracted to the tools they have to fight illicit activity in the financial system, and they won't. I mean, I don't think that they should let them go, but I certainly also don't think that they will let them go very easily. And so I think we as an industry have to really grapple with, are there, I call them compromises, other, or design choices that we can make that will make our systems more impervious and more resistant to illicit activity, and think very creatively about that. And I think there are a lot of smart people in this space, and we ought to be able to come up with some good answers.
We have a little less than 7 minutes left, and I want to move on to the third topic, which is what's next for digital currencies. In doing this, though, I'd love to hear from you about what you think is going to happen between now and next year's Singapore FinTech Festival. But I'd also first like to hear something that ties a little bit back to the second topic, just kind of a crossover. And it's kind of a tough question, although you touched upon it a little bit. With potential government adoption of central bank digital currencies, these CBDCs that we've been talking about, and also, the new wave of faster payment models that offer real-time payment capabilities at very low cost, sometimes using mobile phone numbers or other, virtual proxies. Are these threats to digital currency adoption in the next, say, 12 months? Or is there a way to work together? Are these, is it a zero-sum game? Please, any of you, if you'd like to answer that, and also when you do, what you see coming in the next 12 months.
I'll start on CBDCs. I don't think that there are very many of them coming before the next FinTech Festival in a year, but I think people will continue to work on them. At least the way I think of it at Libra is it's not a threat. We anticipate it happening, and if it does happen, when it does happen, our intent is to upgrade our system to incorporate them and try to get the same benefits that we get from a privately issued stablecoin from a publicly issued one, and maybe even just replace ours with theirs.
I'll ladder off of that. I think we founded Center Consortium with Coinbase a couple of years ago to define standards for fiat digital currencies and create protocols for fiat digital currencies. I think, like Libra Association, there's a belief that consortium of private sector actors can define technology standards, get member financial institutions and others to become stakeholders to really drive and work with the open ecosystem that's out there to drive both technical innovation and user innovation and distribution and adoption. And I think that's happening at a much faster pace than the research projects at Western central banks. And so I think what we're very likely to see over the next 2 to 3 years is rapid acceleration in the adoption of these arrangements, as the FSB calls them, global stablecoin arrangements, for which are standards for how fiat digital currency can function. And then maybe there's some convergence, as Stuart is alluding to, down the road. It may be that at that point in time, when there's billions of people using these, that the leading central banks say, we want to supervise these schemes. We want the firms in them to have special types of charters. We want to have the reserves maybe managed at the central bank. Maybe there's new rule sets, new supervisory arrangements, and so forth, which you've seen in foreign exchange markets, core currency settlement markets, and in other parts of the payment system as well. Historically, most of the payment systems in the world are run by consortium of private sector actors, including Visa, including SWIFT, including NACHA, including many, many others. So I think that it's more likely that public-private collaboration will unfold over the next couple of years, as opposed to some giant initiative that's coming out of, say, the Federal Reserve or the ECB disrupting all this digital currency stuff.
And I think central banks don't want to disrupt everything. I think central banks really want to collaborate, at least the ones I've talked to really want to collaborate with the private sector and fintechs. And even in Cambodia, their goal was never to disintermediate any of the existing providers, but rather to build a payment rails that they can all use in their own systems and, just create new services on top of that. So it raises the bars. The basic bar is now higher than it was before, and that actually pushes innovation forward. I think specifically over the next 12 months, I agree with Stuart that we're not going to see a lot of other central banks releasing new things. I think especially with COVID, they have higher priorities and other problems to solve. I think in the cryptocurrency space, this is going to be, between now and the next Singapore FinTech Festival, going to be a very exciting and huge year. I think it's going to be a roller coaster, especially things to keep an eye on would be like DeFi, other types of, derivatives, synthetic assets, like all kinds of crazy things like that. There's going to be a lot of fun experiments. I don't know if anything will actually make it to the mainstream, but we'll see. I think over the next year, it's going to be another year of experimentation and lots of failures, but then out of that, it'll be a much more mature industry, going far beyond payments and into like smart programmable money.
Thanks. And Surojit, what about you?
I had to go last on this, but I agree with what everyone has said. I think you'll see total value locked into crypto or any digital asset just grow. DeFi right now has exponential growth, like 20x growth in last 9 months or so on assets locked into DeFi protocols. We will expect to see that grow even more. I think there will be 1 or 2 DeFi on DApps that starts becoming kind of mainstream, becoming real. We are already seeing that with yield kind of generation type apps where companies like Compound has made a lot of progress. We'll see some of them becoming a lot more mainstream. I think we'll also see a lot of mainstream tech companies actually getting into crypto. We already see that with PayPal joining in, but I think you will see more mainstream tech companies kind of integrating their services with crypto services. I think we'll see global growth in cross-border payments with crypto, like merchant acceptance of crypto. I don't think we'll solve all the regulatory problems like everybody else said, but I think 1 or 2 countries will probably take leadership in next 1 year and really understand this technology well, working with some of the companies in this space. I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you, guys. I think everyone watching this can see why you guys are really the leaders in this growing space. And it's been a real pleasure sharing the stage, if you will, with you.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks,
Thank you, Josh. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Nice to be with you.
Thank you to Joshua and the rest of the panel. And certainly one of the main messages coming out of this discussion was the need to raise awareness on cryptocurrencies, to educate people on how to use these digital currencies and possibly how to use them and what exactly they are. And maybe one day we'll see digital currencies entering the mainstream. Well, will that happen? We can only wait and see.